The average millionaire drives a used car while the average broke person is making payments on a luxury vehicle they can't afford. This single decision perfectly captures why some families build generational wealth while others stay trapped in the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. In this video, I'm breaking down the millionaire math that separates truly wealthy families from those who just look rich. If you've ever wondered how cheap people end up with millions while big spenders struggle with debt, you're about to discover exactly how the wealth gap is created, and it has nothing to do with income. The consumption trap: why most people stay broke. Did you know the average American spends 95% of what they earn, regardless of their income level? That's right. Whether someone makes $50,000 or $500,000 a year, chances are they're spending almost everything that comes in. This shocking statistic reveals the first piece of the puzzle in understanding why so many people struggle financially despite decent incomes. Welcome to what I call the consumption trap, a financial quicksand that's keeping millions of Americans perpetually broke. In today's world, we're surrounded by a consumption culture that operates like a treadmill. No matter how fast you run, you never actually get anywhere. This isn't by accident, it's by design. Let's break down exactly how this trap works. Modern society has created the perfect storm of financial mediocrity through three powerful forces working together: rampant inflation, social media pressure, and incredibly easy access to credit. These forces don't just influence our spending, they fundamentally reshape our relationship with money. Think about inflation for a second. Prices for housing, education, and healthcare have skyrocketed while wages have barely budged. This creates a constant pressure to earn more. But here's the kicker: as people earn more, they rarely save that additional income. Instead, they expand their lifestyle to match their new earnings, a phenomenon economists call lifestyle inflation. And this brings us to the evolution of the classic keeping up with the Joneses mentality. In the past, you might have felt pressure to match your neighbor's new car or kitchen renovation. Today, you're not just competing with the Joneses, you're competing with carefully curated Instagram feeds showing normal people with luxury vacations, designer wardrobes, and seemingly perfect homes. It's no longer keeping up with the Joneses, it's keeping up with influencers, an entirely impossible and manufactured standard. Social media has transformed our consumption habits in ways we're only beginning to understand. Every time you scroll through your feed, you're bombarded with thousands of subtle and not so subtle messages that you need more stuff to be happy, successful, or worthy. Each like, comment, and share on a lifestyle post reinforces the idea that consumption equals status. Marketing experts have known for decades how to target our psychological vulnerabilities around status and belonging. They've just gotten better at it. Modern advertising doesn't just sell products, it sells identities. That $1,000 iPhone isn't just a phone, it's a statement about who you are. That luxury SUV isn't just transportation, it's proof you've made it. These psychological hooks are incredibly effective at separating us from our money. Easy credit is the third piece of this perfect storm. With credit cards, buy now, pay later services, and 84-month car loans, we can immediately obtain things we can't actually afford. This easy credit creates an illusion of wealth that masks the reality of mounting debt. When you can drive a luxury car with no money down and a 7-year payment plan, the line between looking wealthy and being wealthy gets dangerously blurred. This brings us to one of the most widespread and dangerous misconceptions in personal finance: the belief that high income automatically creates wealth. I see this all the time. People with six-figure incomes who are just as broke as those earning much less. That's because wealth isn't determined by what you make. It's determined by the gap between what you make and what you spend. Consider the doctor earning $300,000 a year who lives in an expensive neighborhood, drives a luxury car, sends kids to private school, and takes lavish vacations. Despite the impressive income, they might have minimal savings and substantial debt. Meanwhile, a teacher earning $70,000 who lives below their means, invests consistently, and avoids debt might actually be building significant wealth over time. The income-wealth disconnect explains why we see so many high-income professionals who work until their 70s with little financial security. They fell into the trap of focusing exclusively on the income side of the equation while ignoring the spending side. Their solution to financial pressure was always make more money rather than spend less than I make. The truly insidious part of the consumption trap is how normalized financial struggle has become in our society. We accept as normal that most Americans are one emergency away from financial disaster. We've normalized carrying credit card balances, being underwater on car loans, and working jobs we hate because we're trapped by our financial obligations. What's particularly alarming is how the consumption trap affects people across all income levels. Research shows that income mobility doesn't necessarily lead to wealth mobility. In other words, people who manage to increase their incomes often don't see corresponding increases in their net worth. They simply adjust their spending upward, maintaining the same precarious financial position they had before. The statistics tell the story. Nearly 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in savings. About 78% live paycheck to paycheck. Even among those earning over $100,000 annually, nearly half report having little to no savings. These aren't just numbers. They represent millions of people trapped in a cycle of earn, spend, repeat with no end in sight. So why can't people break free from this trap? It's partly because the consumption culture creates a powerful psychological dependency. Spending becomes a form of emotional regulation. We shop when we're sad, celebrate with purchases when we're happy, and buy things to relieve stress or boredom. This emotional relationship with spending makes rational financial decisions incredibly difficult. Another factor is what behavioral economists call present bias, our tendency to value immediate gratification over future benefits. The joy of buying something now feels more real and immediate than the abstract benefit of having money saved in 20 years. This psychological tendency makes saving and investing feel like punishment rather than protection. Social pressure compounds the problem. In many social circles, frugality is stigmatized while conspicuous consumption is celebrated. Being careful with money can be misinterpreted as being cheap or unsuccessful, creating powerful social incentives to spend beyond our means. Most people remain trapped in paycheck-to-paycheck cycles because they focus almost exclusively on income rather than the spending side of the equation. They believe the path to financial freedom is earning more, when in reality, controlling spending is the critical variable that creates wealth. Income is certainly important, but without managing the outflow, no amount of income can create lasting financial security. The math is actually quite simple. If you spend everything you make, you'll never build wealth, regardless of your income. If you spend less than you make and invest the difference, you'll build wealth over time, even with a modest income. Yet this fundamental principle gets lost in our consumption-focused culture. Frugal versus cheap. The critical distinction wealthy families understand. That thin line between frugality and cheapness might be the most misunderstood wealth principle hiding in plain sight. When Warren Buffett, one of the richest people on the planet, still lives in the same modest house he bought in 1958 for $31,500, is he being smart with money or just plain cheap? Meanwhile, the person who calculates exactly 15% of their restaurant bill but never rounds up is often labeled the same way. But these behaviors couldn't be more different when it comes to building lasting wealth. Let's clear something up right away. Frugality and cheapness are not the same thing, and wealthy families understand this distinction at a fundamental level. Frugality is about maximizing value and making intentional spending decisions aligned with your long-term goals. Cheapness, on the other hand, is an obsession with saving money at all costs, even when it damages relationships or leads to poor quality outcomes. Think about it this way. When Buffett drives his 2014 Cadillac to McDonald's for breakfast, he's not being stingy. He's practicing intentional spending. The same billionaire who lives modestly has given away billions to charity. This apparent contradiction reveals the essence of strategic frugality that builds wealth over generations. Society has unfortunately blurred the lines between these two concepts. We've created a false dichotomy. Either you enjoy life and spend freely, or you're a penny-pinching miser who refuses to enjoy anything. This confusion leads many people to reject frugality entirely, missing out on one of the most powerful wealth-building tools available. The wealthy aren't afraid of the cheap label because they understand the profound difference. Frugal people focus on maximizing value. They're willing to spend good money on things that truly matter to them. Cheap people, by contrast, focus exclusively on minimizing cost, regardless of the consequences. You can spot this distinction in how millionaires approach different spending categories. Take Mark Zuckerberg, who, despite his billions, often wears the same style of gray t-shirt. Or look at IKEA founder Ingvar Kamprad, who was worth over $40 billion but flew economy class and drove a decades-old Volvo. These aren't signs of cheapness. They're examples of people who understand which expenses actually matter to them. What's fascinating is that these same frugal billionaires often spend quite generously in other areas of their lives. They might minimize spending on status symbols but invest heavily in education, experiences, or causes they believe in. This selective spending pattern reveals a sophisticated approach to money that most Americans completely miss. The frugal person asks, is this purchase worth the true cost? They're thinking about long-term value. Will this item last? Will it appreciate or depreciate? Does it align with my values and goals? The cheap person simply asks, what's the lowest price I can pay right now, with no consideration for future implications. This distinction becomes even more important when you consider how these approaches affect relationships. Frugality respects others and maintains ethical boundaries. The frugal person might suggest a reasonably priced restaurant for a group dinner, but will always pay their fair share and tip appropriately. The cheap person might agree to an expensive restaurant, but then try to split the bill equally after ordering the cheapest item. I once knew a successful business owner who drove a 10-year-old Honda while his employees assumed he must be struggling financially. What they didn't know was that he owned multiple investment properties and had a 7-figure portfolio. He simply understood that cars are depreciating assets, and his money would work harder for him elsewhere. That's strategic frugality in action. Research shows this pattern consistently appears among millionaires. They're willing to sacrifice short-term pleasures for long-term financial freedom. But they're not miserly. They're intentional. They understand opportunity cost, that every dollar spent on something unnecessary is actually worth much more when invested over time. The psychological impact of these different approaches is equally telling. Frugality creates a sense of control and reduces financial stress. It fosters an abundance mindset where you feel secure enough to be generous when it matters. Cheapness, however, often stems from a scarcity mindset that creates anxiety about any spending and can lead to feelings of guilt when you do spend money. I've noticed that wealthy families pass down frugal habits, not cheap ones. They teach their children to evaluate purchases based on value rather than status. They demonstrate how to enjoy life fully while still prioritizing financial security. This mindset transfer may be even more valuable than the actual money they inherit. One particularly illuminating example comes from a family I interviewed who built a $5 million net worth, starting from almost nothing. The parents bought quality furniture that lasted decades rather than cheap pieces they'd need to replace frequently. They splurged on family vacations that created lasting memories, but drove modest cars and lived in a comfortable but not extravagant home. Their adult children now approach money the same way, building their own wealth while maintaining a high quality of life. The truly wealthy understand that strategic frugality allows them to be generous in ways that actually matter. They don't deprive themselves. They simply redirect their resources toward their highest priorities. This intentional approach to spending creates both immediate satisfaction and long-term financial security. So what distinguishes frugality from cheapness in practice? Frugal people spend mindfully, seeking quality and durability. They consider the total cost of ownership, not just the purchase price. They're willing to invest more upfront for things that save money over time. Cheap people chase the lowest price, regardless of quality, often ending up spending more in the long run on replacements or repairs. Frugal people are generous with others and recognize when spending benefits relationships. Cheap people often prioritize saving money over people's feelings or needs. Frugal people invest in experiences and items that align with their values. Cheap people avoid spending whenever possible, even at the cost of experiences they might value. Strategic frugality isn't about deprivation, it's about alignment. It's spending in ways that reflect what you truly value rather than what society says you should value. This alignment creates a sense of purpose and satisfaction that mindless spending never can. The millionaire spending blueprint, where they save versus splurge. That alignment between values and spending isn't just a nice idea, it's exactly what millionaires have mastered in practice. When you examine their bank statements, you'll find spending patterns that might completely shock you. While most Americans pour money into status symbols, millionaires are investing their cash in categories that actually multiply their wealth over time. The data tells an interesting story. The average millionaire spends 3 times more on education than typical consumers. Meanwhile, about 80% of them choose to drive used cars rather than new ones. This isn't random, it's a calculated wealth-building strategy that flies in the face of what most people consider normal spending. Think about it. We've all seen that neighbor who stretches their budget for a luxury car they can barely afford, while quietly cutting corners on things like retirement savings or their kids' college funds. Millionaires do exactly the opposite. They ruthlessly minimize spending in categories that depreciate quickly, while investing heavily in areas that appreciate or build future earning potential. Let's break down exactly where millionaires choose to save. Transportation is one of their biggest money-saving categories. While your average consumer is financing a new vehicle with a 7-year loan and watching it lose 60% of its value in the first few years, millionaires are typically driving reliable used cars they paid for in cash. Many drive these vehicles for 8 to 10 years before replacing them, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetimes that can be redirected to wealth-building investments. Housing is another area where wealthy people often spend much less than they could. The typical American stretches to buy as much house as the bank will approve them for. But millionaires frequently live in homes that cost well below what they could afford, often spending just 10 to 20% of their net worth on their primary residence instead of the 70–80% many Americans commit to. This doesn't mean they live in tiny apartments. They simply avoid overextending themselves with excessive square footage or prestigious zip codes that don't enhance their actual quality of life. Clothing and accessories? That's another category where the wealthy consistently minimize spending. Many millionaires shop at ordinary retail stores and focus on quality basics rather than designer labels. They understand that a closet full of rapidly changing fashion trends is essentially a depreciating asset that offers virtually zero return on investment. But here's where it gets really interesting. These same frugal millionaires who pinch pennies on clothes will often spend lavishly in categories most Americans consider optional. Education is a prime example. Whether it's advanced degrees, professional certifications, specialized training, or their children's schooling, millionaires invest heavily in building knowledge and skills. They see education not as an expense, but as an investment with potentially unlimited returns. While the average person complains about the cost of a $500 course that could double their earning potential, millionaires are writing checks for educational experiences that transform their capabilities. Experiences that create meaningful memories and connections are another area where millionaires often spend generously. Whether it's travel, family retreats, or unique learning opportunities, they prioritize experiences that create lasting value rather than objects that quickly lose their novelty. They understand that happiness research consistently shows experiences deliver more satisfaction than material possessions. Quality tools and equipment related to their work or serious hobbies also get the green light. A millionaire might drive a 10-year-old car, but own top-of-the-line equipment for their profession or passion. They recognize that tools that enhance productivity or create genuine enjoyment represent smart investments. Health is another non-negotiable category. From preventative care to fitness to quality nutrition, millionaires invest in maintaining their physical and mental well-being. They understand that health problems not only diminish quality of life, but can quickly wipe out wealth through medical expenses and lost productivity. And here's a category that might surprise you. Millionaires are often generous charitable givers. Many donate significantly to causes they care about, seeing this as both a social responsibility and a way to create meaning with their money. The wealthy frequently report that thoughtful giving brings more satisfaction than luxury consumption. What's fascinating is that these spending patterns often look bizarre or even cheap to status-conscious consumers. Imagine pulling up to a charity gala in a 7-year-old Honda when you could easily afford a brand new Mercedes, or living in a modest neighborhood when you could swing a McMansion. These choices might seem strange to those caught in the consumption treadmill, but they reflect sophisticated financial strategy. These counterintuitive spending decisions create both immediate and long-term benefits. In the short term, they free up significant cash flow that can be directed toward investments. In the long term, they establish habits that compound wealth rather than erode it. The millionaire's spending blueprint essentially sorts expenses into two categories: wealth multipliers and wealth drainers. Wealth multipliers are expenses that either appreciate in value or increase your earning potential: education, strategic networking, business investments, and appreciating assets. Wealth drainers are expenses that immediately decrease in value the moment you make them: luxury cars, designer clothes, excessive housing, and status-oriented purchases. Let me share a real example that illustrates this principle perfectly. A client of mine runs a successful 7-figure business, but still shops at discount grocery stores and drives a 2015 Toyota. Meanwhile, he's invested over $100,000 in the past year alone on advanced business training and strategic coaching. To his neighbors, he might look cheap, but those investments in his business knowledge have already returned over $300,000 in additional profit. That's a 200% return in less than a year. Try getting that from a luxury car. Another millionaire I know wears basic clothes from retail chains, but recently spent $20,000 sending his teenage daughter to a specialized STEM program that helped her secure a full scholarship to an elite engineering university. That $20,000 investment effectively saved hundreds of thousands in future college costs, while dramatically increasing his daughter's lifetime earning potential. The good news? This blueprint isn't just for the already wealthy. You can adopt these spending patterns regardless of your current income level. The key is making intentional choices about where your money goes, rather than following cultural expectations or emotional impulses. Start by looking at your own spending and sorting each category as either a wealth multiplier or a wealth drainer. Then begin shifting your resources away from the drainers and toward the multipliers. This doesn't mean living a joyless existence. It means defining for yourself which expenses actually enhance your life and future prospects versus which ones just temporarily impress others. When you do this consistently, you'll notice something extraordinary happen. You'll start enjoying what you have more because each purchase aligns with your values. You'll worry less about keeping up appearances because you're focused on building real security. And most importantly, you'll watch your net worth grow at a pace that seemed impossible when you were caught in the consumption trap. Wealthy people understand which spending makes you richer over time versus which spending makes you poorer. They've figured out how to enjoy their money while still growing their wealth. The secret isn't earning more. It's strategically directing what compound effect, how small frugal choices create massive wealth. Strategic spending is crucial for building wealth, but there's another financial superpower, the wealthy leverage, that's almost magical in its simplicity. Would you believe that a janitor with a modest income throughout his life managed to accumulate over $8 million by the time he passed away? The secret wasn't a huge salary or inheritance, it was understanding a mathematical principle that Einstein reportedly called the eighth wonder of the world. I'm talking about compound interest, the silent wealth builder that transforms small, consistent choices into massive financial outcomes. While most people focus on making more money, the wealthy obsess over what their saved money does over time. This is where the real magic happens. Let me break this down with a simple example. That $5 daily coffee you enjoy? In the eyes of a millionaire, that's not just $5, it's potentially thousands of dollars vanishing from your future net worth. How? Let's do the math. $5 per day is about $150 per month or $1,825 per year. Now, if you invested that money instead and earned an average 8% return, the historical stock market average, after 30 years, you'd have over $200,000. But wait, it gets even more dramatic over longer periods. If you started this habit in your 20s and continued until retirement age, that same daily coffee habit could represent over $1 million in lost retirement funds. That's right. A simple daily purchase multiplied across decades could literally cost you a seven-figure sum. The wealthy understand this multiplication effect intuitively. They've internalized what financial experts call the Rule of 72, a simple formula that tells you how quickly your money doubles. Just divide 72 by your annual rate of return to estimate how many years it takes for your investment to double. At an 8% return, your money doubles approximately every 9 years. 72, 8 equals 9. This means $10,000 invested at age 25 becomes $20,000 by age 34, $40,000 by age 43, $80,000 by age 52, and $160,000 by age 61. This explains why starting early is so critical. Every 9-year delay cuts your potential wealth in half. Consider the tale of two brothers who each inherited $10,000. The first brother invested immediately, while the second waited just 5 years. By retirement age, the first brother had substantially more money, not because he invested more, but because his money had more time to compound and grow exponentially. The real-life story of Ronald Read perfectly illustrates this principle. Despite working as a janitor and gas station attendant his entire life, Read built a stock portfolio worth millions by consistently investing in blue-chip stocks and dividend-paying companies. When he passed away, people were shocked to discover this unassuming man had accumulated over $8 million. His secret? Small, consistent investments allowed to compound over decades. What's fascinating is how the wealthy think about these small daily expenses. When a millionaire looks at a $25 takeout meal, they're not just seeing a convenient dinner, they're mentally calculating its future cost. If that $25 weekly meal habit was instead invested over 40 years, it would grow to nearly $300,000 at an 8% return. This is why frugal people so often end up exponentially wealthier than big earners who can't control their spending. And it's not just about avoiding expenses, it's about consistently investing what you save. Dollar cost averaging. Investing a fixed amount regularly regardless of market conditions allows you to purchase more shares when prices are low and fewer when prices are high. Over time, this strategy reduces your average cost per share and magnifies the compounding effect. Another powerful technique utilized by the wealthy is dividend reinvestment. When you own dividend-paying stocks, you can choose to have those dividends automatically purchase additional shares instead of taking the cash. These additional shares then generate their own dividends, creating a snowball effect of growth over time. Let's make this concrete. If a 30-year-old invests $20,000 in their 401k and never adds another penny, assuming an 8% annual return, that amount could exceed $128 million by retirement age. Now imagine the impact of saving that amount every year. This is how ordinary people with ordinary incomes build extraordinary wealth. The average American rarely makes these calculations. They see a $5 coffee as just $5, not as the $1,000 future cost it truly represents. They fail to recognize how small decisions compound dramatically over time, either building wealth or stealing it from their future selves. What's most empowering about compound interest is that it works regardless of your income level. Someone making $50,000 a year who saves and invests consistently can absolutely build more wealth than someone earning $200,000 who spends everything. The math doesn't care about your job title or education. It rewards patience and consistency above all else. Here's the really good news. You don't need to be a mathematical genius to harness this power. Simple automated investment systems can do the heavy lifting for you. Set up automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, and you'll never even feel the money leaving your account. Your future self will thank you when that automation turns into hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Think about it this way. Every purchase you make actually has two price tags. There's the sticker price you pay today, and there's the opportunity cost of what that money could have grown to if invested instead. The wealthy are masters at seeing both price tags clearly and making decisions accordingly. This doesn't mean you should never enjoy your money or live like a miser. It means becoming strategic about which expenses truly enhance your life and which ones are merely draining your future wealth. It's about understanding the incredible leverage that time gives your money and making conscious choices with that knowledge. The simple formula that turns everyday savings into generational wealth isn't complicated. It's the consistent investing of avoided expenses, allowed to compound over long periods of time. When you view your finances through this lens, seemingly insignificant daily choices suddenly take on enormous importance. That's the real secret that turns janitors into millionaires and helps modest earners outperform big spenders in the wealth-building game. Quality of life hacking: how to live well while building wealth. Would you believe that the wealthiest individuals often enjoy life more while spending far less than their upper-middle-class counterparts? It's not just about pinching pennies, it's about something far more strategic. The psychology behind this apparent contradiction reveals something surprising about what truly creates a fulfilling life. Most people assume that frugality means a life of sacrifice and deprivation. They picture coupon clipping extremists who never eat out, wear secondhand clothes, and constantly say no to life's pleasures. But this couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to millionaires who practice strategic underspending. Here's what's fascinating. Research published in the Journal of Consumer Research has found that people consistently derive greater satisfaction from experiences, like travel, concerts, or social gatherings, than they do from material possessions. And guess what? This is exactly where wealthy individuals often choose to allocate their discretionary spending. Think about your last major purchase. Maybe it was a designer handbag, the latest smartphone, or some fancy home decor. Remember that initial rush of excitement? How long did it actually last? A week? A couple of days? Maybe just a few hours? This phenomenon has a name: hedonic adaptation, and it's the psychological process where humans quickly return to a baseline level of happiness, regardless of positive or negative changes in circumstances. What makes this so significant for your wealth-building journey is understanding how hedonic adaptation creates an endless treadmill of consumption. As you acquire more things, the joy from each purchase diminishes more quickly, pushing you to buy something new to chase that fleeting happiness high. Meanwhile, your bank account takes hit after hit, with nothing substantial to show for it in terms of lasting contentment. Consider Cedric Nash's approach. After inheriting $10,000, rather than splurging on status symbols, he invested wisely and deliberately lived below his means. The result? He achieved millionaire status by age 32 while maintaining a lifestyle that brought him genuine fulfillment. His strategy wasn't about deprivation. It was about intentionally directing resources toward what truly enhanced his quality of life. The wealthy understand something powerful. True luxury isn't about having expensive possessions. It's about having the freedom to spend your time as you choose. It's about creating a life where financial stress doesn't keep you up at night. It's about building a future where you work because you want to, not because you have to. Let's get practical. How can you substitute expensive habits with equally satisfying alternatives without feeling deprived? Instead of weekly dinners at high-end restaurants, many financially savvy individuals host potluck dinner parties with friends. This not only costs a fraction of the price, but often creates more meaningful connections and memories. Rather than buying new books, they utilize libraries or book-sharing groups. Instead of expensive gym memberships, they form neighborhood running clubs or use free workout videos. One particularly powerful approach is the downgrade, not eliminate strategy. Love your morning coffee shop ritual? Rather than cutting it completely, try going twice a week instead of daily, or ordering a simple coffee instead of a specialty drink. This preserves the core experience while dramatically reducing the cost. The wealthy also practice what financial experts call value-based spending. This means ruthlessly cutting expenses that don't align with your core values while being generous with spending in areas that truly matter to you. Maybe you're passionate about travel, but don't care about driving a fancy car. In that case, keep your reliable used vehicle for another 5 years and use those savings for meaningful adventures that create lasting memories. Family financial discussions play a crucial role in this approach too. Studies show that families who regularly talk about money management and work together toward financial goals report higher overall life satisfaction. These conversations create a supportive environment where everyone understands the why behind spending decisions, making it feel like a shared mission rather than restrictive budgeting. Teaching children about financial responsibility is another cornerstone of the millionaire approach to quality of life. By involving kids in age-appropriate money discussions, explaining budgeting basics, and encouraging saving habits, wealthy families equip the next generation with skills that will serve them throughout life. This education becomes an invaluable inheritance, one that can't be squandered like money often is. Another clever strategy is what I call experience stacking, combining multiple sources of enjoyment into a single activity. For example, rather than separate expenses for fitness, entertainment, and socializing, hiking with friends delivers all three benefits in one cost-free package. This approach maximizes your happiness return on investment while minimizing financial outlay. The concept of planned luxury is also worth exploring. Instead of impulse purchases, the financially savvy often schedule and anticipate special treats. This anticipation period actually enhances the pleasure derived from the experience when it finally happens. By limiting frequency but not necessarily quality, you can enjoy premium experiences while keeping your overall spending in check. Look at how millionaires approach housing. Many choose homes that are modest relative to their means, but invest in specific features that enhance their daily quality of life. Perhaps they choose a smaller house in a walkable neighborhood rather than a mansion in a distant suburb. Or maybe they prioritize a gourmet kitchen because cooking is a passion, while keeping other areas of the home simple. Technology offers incredible opportunities for quality of life hacking too. Subscription services can be strategically shared among family members. Free or low-cost apps can provide entertainment, education, and convenience that would have cost thousands just a decade ago. Virtual experiences have democratized access to cultural events and learning opportunities that were once available only to those who could afford expensive tickets and travel. Wealthy individuals also understand the concept of enough. Rather than chasing an ever-escalating lifestyle, they identify what truly brings them satisfaction and stop the pursuit of more once those needs are met. This creates a powerful buffer against lifestyle inflation and the constant pressure to upgrade that society pushes on us. Perhaps most importantly, the wealthy recognize that time is the ultimate luxury. By spending less on material goods, they often gain the freedom to work less or more flexibly. This creates space for the most precious experiences of all: meaningful time with loved ones, pursuit of passions, and the ability to help others. Immigrant wealth formula: case studies in first-generation millionaires. Time might be the ultimate luxury for the wealthy, but for first-generation immigrant families, survival often transforms into extraordinary wealth through methods most Americans never consider. These families arrive with empty pockets but full minds, turning seemingly restrictive financial practices into million-dollar portfolios, while many born into privilege struggle paycheck to paycheck. Have you ever wondered why immigrants are 4 times more likely to become millionaires than native-born Americans? It's not luck or special connections, it's a wealth formula hiding in plain sight. Let's look at the Hmong community as a fascinating example. After relocating to America from Southeast Asia, many Hmong families arrived with agricultural backgrounds and minimal formal education. Yet despite these challenging starting conditions, they've developed remarkable financial resilience. Their secret? A practice called kevsibkumniaj, or money pooling. Here's how it works. Family members contribute a set amount each month into a collective fund. This pooled money becomes a powerful financial tool, providing capital for home purchases, business startups, or emergency expenses without relying on traditional banking systems that might be inaccessible to newcomers. This collective approach stands in stark contrast to the individualistic financial model most Americans follow. While mainstream financial advice focuses on personal credit scores and individual retirement accounts, immigrant communities leverage the collective strength of family networks to build wealth exponentially faster. The financial behaviors in these communities directly contradict what consumer culture teaches us is normal. Instead of financing new vehicles, immigrant families often share transportation resources. Rather than stretching to buy the biggest house possible with the smallest down payment, they might have multiple generations under one roof, not just to save money, but to pool income streams and accelerate savings. I recently interviewed several first-generation millionaires from different backgrounds, and distinct patterns emerged across their stories. One Vietnamese family arrived with literally nothing but the clothes they wore. The parents worked multiple minimum wage jobs while their children attended public schools. Instead of renting separate apartments, 3 related families shared a modest home, splitting expenses and childcare responsibilities. Within 15 years, this extended family unit had purchased 4 rental properties and opened 2 successful restaurants. Their combined net worth exceeded $3 million, all starting from zero. The patriarch explained, "In America, everyone wants privacy and space right away. We wanted wealth first, then space." This mindset difference creates an extraordinary financial advantage. While many Americans prioritize immediate comfort and status symbols, immigrant families often operate with a completely different timeline, thinking in decades rather than months. Education emerges as another consistent theme across immigrant wealth stories. These families frequently make extreme sacrifices to fund educational opportunities, viewing knowledge as an indestructible asset that can't be taxed, stolen, or devalued by inflation. One Indian family I interviewed lived in a basement apartment for 12 years to afford private tutoring and advanced STEM programs for their children. Today, both children work in technology with combined annual incomes exceeding $400,000, and they're following the same wealth-building playbook their parents established: high earnings paired with modest consumption and aggressive investing. The approach to debt in immigrant communities also differs dramatically from mainstream American attitudes. Many first-generation wealth builders maintain cultural aversions to debt, preferring to save for purchases rather than finance them. This sometimes means delayed gratification, waiting years to make significant purchases until cash is available. An interesting case study comes from a Korean family who built a dry cleaning business into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. While they could have expanded rapidly using business loans, they instead grew methodically, using only profits to fund each new location opening. This debt-free expansion took longer, but created an unshakable business foundation that survived multiple economic downturns that bankrupted leveraged competitors. Multi-generational housing represents another powerful wealth accelerator. When 3 generations share one home, the financial benefits multiply beyond just divided housing costs. Grandparents often provide childcare, eliminating this massive expense for working parents. Young adults can save aggressively during their highest earning potential years instead of spending on rent, and older family members receive built-in care, avoiding costly assisted living facilities. One Chinese-American family I interviewed maintained this living arrangement for over 20 years. The compound effect was remarkable. They accumulated enough capital to purchase 8 residential properties, just with each adult family member now having a net worth exceeding $1 million. The family matriarch noted, "Americans think we sacrifice comfort by living together, but we see it as gaining financial freedom while staying connected." The consumption philosophy within these communities also creates wealth advantages. Many immigrant families maintain spending patterns from their countries of origin, where necessities cost less. This creates natural spending buffers against lifestyle inflation, even as incomes rise. A physician from Nigeria explained, "My American colleagues upgraded their housing and cars with each promotion. I kept driving my old Toyota and living in my starter home for 15 years while investing the difference. They have impressive homes with massive mortgages. I have 7 rental properties and a paid-off home." Language barriers and limited financial education might seem like disadvantages, but they often function as protective factors against marketing manipulation. Being less influenced by advertising and social media pressure, many immigrants maintain stronger immunity to consumption triggers that drain wealth from mainstream consumers. What's particularly fascinating is how these wealth-building approaches often disappear by the 3rd generation as families assimilate into mainstream American consumer culture. The wealth formula works so effectively that it creates enough prosperity for subsequent generations to abandon the very practices that created their advantage. But here's the exciting part. These strategies aren't genetic or culturally exclusive. Anyone can adopt these wealth-building formulas regardless of background. The key elements are: 1. Prioritizing community resource pooling over individualistic financial models. 2. Embracing delayed gratification with multi-year or multi-decade planning horizons. 3. Viewing education as the highest return investment possible. 4. Minimizing lifestyle inflation even as income grows. 5. Leveraging multi-generational cooperation for accelerated wealth building. 6. Maintaining strong cultural immunity to consumption pressure. The Hmong community provides an especially powerful example of adaptability. Coming from an agricultural economy with minimal formal finance systems, they've successfully translated their collective approach to the American context. Their transition from reliance on public assistance to achieving remarkable economic progress demonstrates how these principles work regardless of starting position. What makes these stories particularly powerful is that they aren't relying on high incomes or special advantages. They're using strategic frugality and community cooperation to transform modest earnings into substantial wealth. These families aren't just surviving. They're thriving by rejecting the consumption treadmill that traps so many in paycheck-to-paycheck cycles. Consider this. If families can build 7-figure portfolios, starting with minimal resources and often significant obstacles like language barriers and limited education, imagine what's possible by combining these strategies with the advantages many Americans already have. Psychological wealth transfer, what rich kids learn that poor kids don't. The wealth that immigrant families build through frugality and smart investment doesn't automatically transfer to the next generation. In fact, the statistics paint a sobering picture. 70% of wealthy families lose their fortunes by the 2nd generation, and a staggering 90% see that wealth disappear by the 3rd generation. This phenomenon isn't about money mysteriously vanishing. It's about something far more fundamental, failing to transfer alongside the bank accounts. What's happening here? The answer lies not in financial instruments, but in something more valuable: financial education and mindset. While we've explored how disciplined spending habits can create wealth, the true challenge isn't building wealth, but ensuring it survives beyond one generation. Think about it this way. You can hand someone $1 million. But if they don't understand how that money works, how long do you think it will last? The psychological relationship with money, how we think about it, talk about it, and manage it, is actually the most valuable inheritance wealthy families pass down. This transfer of financial psychology explains why some families maintain wealth for generations, while others watch it disappear despite significant financial advantages. Let's break down what wealthy parents do differently when it comes to raising financially savvy kids. The contrast between how different socioeconomic classes approach money conversations with their children is striking. In many middle and lower income households, money discussions often center around scarcity. We can't afford that. Money doesn't grow on trees, or save for a rainy day. While well-intentioned, these messages emphasize limitation rather than possibility. Wealthy families, by contrast, tend to frame money conversations around opportunity, growth, and responsibility. Their children hear phrases like, "Let's talk about how this purchase fits into our financial goals," How could we invest this money instead? Or, what's the long-term value of this decision? Notice the profound difference in mindset these conversations create. But wealthy parents go beyond just talking differently about money. They create structured learning experiences that build financial competence. Many affluent families implement allowance systems that aren't just handouts but tools for teaching money management. Children might receive funds divided into categories, some for immediate spending, some for short-term saving, some for long-term investing, and some for charitable giving. This simple structure introduces core financial concepts before kids even understand what a stock market is. Consider how powerful these early lessons become. While most children learn that money is something you work for and then spend, wealthy children learn that money is a tool that can work for you. By age 10, many children from wealthy families have already operated mini businesses, managed investment accounts with guidance, and participated in family financial discussions about major purchases or investment opportunities. The Hmong community offers a fascinating example of how financial values transfer between generations. First-generation immigrants emphasize saving and self-sufficiency, teaching children through direct involvement in family financial decisions. However, researchers have observed that younger generations may drift toward more consumer-oriented behaviors as they assimilate into mainstream American culture, precisely why intentional financial education becomes so crucial. This educational approach isn't just theoretical. Research shows that children who receive financial education early are significantly more likely to develop healthy money habits like budgeting, saving, and investing. These aren't innate skills. They're learned behaviors that wealthy parents deliberately cultivate in their children. One particularly powerful teaching method wealthy families use is involving children in actual financial decisions. When considering a major purchase, these parents might walk their children through the decision-making process, evaluating alternatives, considering opportunity costs, and thinking about long-term implications. This approach stands in stark contrast to how many families shield children from financial realities or present money as a mysterious adult concern. The psychological impact of these different approaches cannot be overstated. Children raised with financial transparency and education develop what psychologists call financial self-efficacy, confidence in their ability to make sound money decisions. Those raised with financial secrecy or anxiety often develop what researchers call money avoidance tendencies, where financial matters trigger stress or denial. There's also the phenomenon known as sudden wealth syndrome, which highlights the psychological challenges inheritors face when receiving wealth they weren't prepared to manage. Many heirs to substantial fortunes describe feeling overwhelmed, guilty, or paralyzed by the responsibility. Without proper financial education, inheriting wealth can actually become a psychological burden rather than an advantage. This explains why lottery winners so frequently go broke within a few years. The money isn't the problem, it's the lack of psychological preparation for managing it. The same principle applies to family wealth transfers. When financial assets pass to the next generation without the accompanying financial mindset, those assets typically disappear quickly. The good news? These teaching methods aren't exclusive to the wealthy. Any parent, regardless of current financial status, can implement wealthy financial education practices. Starting conversations about money early, involving children in age-appropriate financial decisions, creating structured allowance systems that teach saving and investing. These approaches cost nothing but potentially yield millions in future wealth retention. Some practical strategies any family can implement include creating a family bank, where children can propose small business ideas or investment opportunities. Having regular family money meetings where everyone contributes to financial discussions. Using everyday shopping trips as opportunities to teach value assessment. And helping children open investment accounts, even with very small amounts, to learn about compound growth. For families concerned about raising entitled children, this education serves another purpose. Children who understand money, where it comes from, how it's managed, and the responsibility it entails, are actually less likely to develop entitled attitudes. They recognize money as a tool requiring stewardship, rather than an endless resource for indulgence. This educational approach also transforms how children view work and career. Rather than seeing jobs solely as sources of income, financially educated children understand how careers fit into broader wealth-building strategies. They evaluate opportunities not just by salary, but by learning potential, network building, and long-term growth prospects. The same criteria wealthy families have used for generations. The most powerful aspect of this psychological wealth transfer is that it works regardless of starting financial position. A family beginning with modest means, but implementing these educational practices, can potentially create more lasting wealth than a family starting with millions, but neglecting financial education. What we're really talking about is developing financial intelligence, the ability to see money not as just numbers, but as a system with rules that can be learned and leveraged. This intelligence includes understanding opportunity costs, recognizing the difference between assets and liabilities, appreciating the time value of money, and developing comfort with delayed gratification. Simply put, wealthy parents aren't just passing down money, they're passing down a relationship with money that enables wealth to grow rather than diminish. This relationship includes practical skills, but also encompasses values and attitudes that support wealth preservation across generations. Tax optimization, the invisible advantage of frugal millionaires. Beyond teaching their kids about money, the truly wealthy are playing chess while everyone else plays checkers when it comes to taxes. What if I told you that frugal millionaires aren't just saving pennies on coffee, but legally keeping thousands more dollars working for them every year through tax strategies that 95% of Americans completely overlook? When Warren Buffett revealed he paid a lower tax rate than his secretary, despite being one of the wealthiest people on the planet, it wasn't because he had some secret tax loophole nobody else could access. In 2021, Buffett's effective tax rate was just 15.8%, while the average American paid significantly more. This wasn't through any shady practices. It was simply through understanding how our tax system actually works. This is the invisible advantage that compounds over decades. While most people obsess over making more money, the wealthy focus on keeping more of what they already earn. Think about it. Would you rather get a 10% raise or legally reduce your taxes by 10%? The net effect on your bank account is similar, but one requires working harder while the other just requires working smarter. The wealthy understand something crucial. It's not just how much you make, but how you make it. Buffett's income primarily comes from capital gains and dividends, which are taxed at lower rates than ordinary income. This isn't accidental. It's strategic wealth protection that compounds over time. Living below your means isn't just about having more money to invest. It's about creating opportunities for tax-advantaged investing. When you're not spending every dollar you earn, you can direct those savings into accounts that shield your money from taxes. Most people miss this connection between frugality and tax efficiency. Let's look at some specific strategies wealthy families use. Tax loss harvesting sounds complicated, but it's simply selling investments that have decreased in value to offset gains from other investments. This reduces your taxable income while allowing you to stay invested in the market. It's like getting a discount on your taxes for being strategic about when you sell. Roth conversions are another powerful tool. By converting traditional retirement funds to Roth accounts during low-income years, wealthy individuals pay taxes at lower rates now, so their investments can grow completely tax-free for decades. This creates a tax-free income stream in retirement that can save hundreds of thousands in taxes over a lifetime. Health savings accounts, HSA, offer what tax experts call a triple tax advantage. Contributions are tax-deductible, growth is tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are also tax-exempt. It's literally the best tax-advantaged account in America. Yet most people either don't use one or use it incorrectly by spending the money each year instead of investing it for long-term growth. The wealthy also understand that retirement accounts aren't just for retirement. They're tax shelters. For 2025, the IRS has increased 401k contribution limits to $23,100 for those under 50, with additional catch-up contributions for older savers. Maxing out these accounts creates an immediate tax deduction while allowing investments to grow tax-deferred for decades. Business ownership unlocks an entirely different league of tax advantages that employees simply can't access. When you own a business, ordinary expenses like your home office, internet, cell phone, and even some travel costs can become legitimate tax deductions. That dinner with a potential client? Tax deductible. The new laptop you need for work? Tax deductible. The conferences you attend to improve your skills? You guessed it, tax deductible. Let me share a quick example. An employee earning $100,000 might pay taxes on nearly all of that income. A business owner earning the same amount might only pay taxes on $70,000 after deducting legitimate business expenses. That's not cheating. It's understanding and working within the tax code as it was designed. Real estate investing offers another set of powerful tax advantages. Through a concept called depreciation, property owners can deduct a portion of their property's value each year from their taxable income, even if the property is actually increasing in value. This creates a paper loss for tax purposes while you're potentially making actual profits. Even more powerful is the 1031 exchange, which allows real estate investors to sell a property and defer all capital gains taxes if they reinvest the proceeds into another similar property. Imagine being able to sell investments that have grown significantly without paying any taxes on those gains. This strategy allows wealth to compound dramatically faster than if taxes were paid with each transaction. What's fascinating is that many of these strategies aren't exclusive to the ultra-wealthy. The average earner can implement many of these same approaches on a smaller scale. You don't need to be a millionaire to open an HSA, maximize your retirement contributions, or even start a small side business that creates tax deductions. The key difference is financial literacy and intentionality. Wealthy families prioritize understanding the tax code and making decisions with tax implications in mind. They view taxes not as something they simply pay once a year, but as an ongoing financial consideration that influences how they structure their income, investments, and spending. This mindset shift is critical. Most Americans view taxes as something unavoidable, like bad weather or traffic. The wealthy view taxes as something manageable, a financial variable they can optimize through strategic planning and structure. Financial education plays a crucial role here. Understanding the nuances of tax laws and investment vehicles empowers individuals to make informed decisions that enhance their wealth-building potential. This knowledge becomes particularly important for families aiming to build generational wealth, as tax efficiency compounds dramatically over decades. The good news, these strategies don't require genius-level intelligence or complex math skills. They require curiosity, education, and the willingness to look beyond conventional financial wisdom. Tax optimization isn't about finding loopholes. It's about using the tax code as it was designed to incentivize certain behaviors like investing, business creation, and retirement planning. Think of it this way. The government creates tax incentives to encourage specific behaviors they want to promote, like home ownership, retirement saving, and business investment. The wealthy simply align their financial lives with these incentives more effectively than most. For example, contributing to a 401k or IRA isn't some secret tax strategy. It's something the government actively encourages through tax incentives. Yet millions of Americans don't maximize these opportunities, essentially choosing to pay more in taxes than necessary while missing out on decades of tax-advantaged growth. What's stopping most people from implementing these strategies? It's rarely the complexity, it's awareness and prioritization. Most Americans focus exclusively on the income side of the equation, believing that earning more is the only path to wealth. They neglect the equally important tax efficiency side that determines how much of that income they actually keep. The compound effect of tax optimization cannot be overstated. Even a 5% difference in your effective tax rate, sustained over decades of earning and investing, can translate to hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars in additional wealth. This is how the wealthy stay wealthy across generations, not just by earning more, but by keeping more of what they earn, working for them. The millionaire next door strategy, implementing wealth principles today. Ever notice how the wealthiest people are often the hardest to spot? While tax strategies build wealth behind the scenes, there's something even more surprising about today's millionaires. They're probably shopping right next to you at Costco or Target. The millionaire driving that 10-year-old Honda likely has more money than the guy flexing in a brand new BMW. This isn't by accident. It's a deliberate strategy called stealth wealth, and it's how ordinary people build extraordinary fortunes. You might be picturing millionaires in mansions with luxury cars and designer clothes, but the reality couldn't be more different. Today's self-made millionaires often live in middle-class neighborhoods, wear non-designer clothes, and blend seamlessly with average earners. This isn't miserliness. It's a sophisticated wealth-building strategy that focuses on what truly matters. Implementing these millionaire habits means swimming against a powerful cultural current. We're bombarded with messages telling us that success equals visible luxury. Social media has supercharged this pressure, making us feel like everyone else is living large while we're falling behind. The reality? Those flaunting wealth are often drowning in debt, while the truly wealthy are quietly building fortunes through consistent, unglamorous habits. So how do you implement the millionaire next door strategy in today's high-pressure economy? Let's break it down into actionable steps that work regardless of your current income level. First, conduct a thorough spending audit, the foundation of strategic frugality. This isn't about tracking every penny you spend on coffee. Instead, focus on identifying your wealth drains, recurring expenses that provide minimal value relative to their cost. Pull up your bank and credit card statements from the last 3 months and categorize every expense. Look for patterns and ask yourself, which expenses bring me genuine joy or move me toward my goals, and which ones just drain my resources. Pay special attention to subscriptions and memberships. These silent wealth killers often fly under the radar. Many millionaires regularly review these automatic charges and ruthlessly eliminate those they're not actively using. One study found that the average American wastes over $275 monthly on subscriptions they barely use. That's $3,300 annually that could be growing in investments. Next, implement what I call automated frugality. Systems that make smart financial decisions your default setting. The wealthy know that willpower is unreliable, so they create structures that enforce good habits automatically. Set up direct deposits that immediately funnel a percentage of each paycheck into investment accounts before you can touch it. The most successful wealth builders often start with just 10% and gradually increase this amount as their income grows. Create separate accounts for different financial goals to avoid the mental accounting trap. Have dedicated accounts for emergencies, major purchases, and retirement that are psychologically harder to raid for impulse buys. Some millionaires even use different banks for their spending versus saving accounts, adding another layer of friction to impulsive withdrawals. Another powerful automation strategy. Schedule an annual expense negotiation day where you call service providers to lower costs on everything from insurance to internet service. Many wealthy individuals do this religiously, saving thousands annually with just a few hours of effort. Now let's talk about a critical aspect of maintaining frugal habits that most people overlook: your social environment. Humans are social creatures, and our spending habits are heavily influenced by those around us. Millionaires understand this and intentionally create what I call a frugality community, a social circle that reinforces smart money decisions rather than undermining them. This doesn't mean ditching all your friends who enjoy spending money. Instead, find or create spaces where you can connect with others who share your financial values. This might be a local investment club, a money-focused online community, or even just 1 or 2 friends who are also committed to building wealth through intentional spending. Some millionaire families even create resource pooling arrangements with trusted friends or relatives. This might mean sharing tools, childcare, or even vacation properties, multiplying everyone's effective wealth without increasing spending. These arrangements work best when formalized with clear agreements about responsibilities and costs. Another powerful strategy is what I call value-aligned spending. This means ruthlessly cutting expenses in categories you don't deeply care about while intentionally spending on what truly matters to you. One millionaire I know drives a 12-year-old Toyota, but hires a weekly house cleaner because she values time with her family more than a newer car. Another lives in a modest home but travels internationally twice yearly because experiencing different cultures brings him joy. This personalized approach is why cookie-cutter budgeting advice often fails. The key isn't minimizing all spending. It's strategically allocating resources toward what you genuinely value while eliminating spending that doesn't align with your priorities. Let's get practical about implementation. Start by identifying your big three, the three expense categories where you'll get the most financial impact from optimization. For most people, these are housing, transportation, and food, which typically consume 70% of the average budget. Small tweaks in these areas create massive financial impact. For housing, consider the 25% rule that many millionaires follow, keeping housing costs below 25% of take-home pay, significantly less than the 30 to 35% most financial advisors recommend. This might mean choosing a slightly smaller home or a neighborhood that's up and coming rather than already established. With transportation, embrace the millionaire mindset by focusing on total cost of ownership rather than monthly payments. Many wealthy individuals drive reliable, fuel-efficient vehicles and keep them for 10+ years, saving hundreds of thousands over a lifetime compared to those who lease or finance new cars every few years. Food offers incredible opportunities for strategic frugality without sacrifice. Meal planning, strategic grocery shopping, and limiting restaurant meals can cut food costs by 30 to 50% while still eating well. One millionaire family I know reduced their food spending by $7,200 annually just by planning meals and shopping with a list. That's over $180,000 in potential investment growth over 25 years. The beauty of these strategies is how quickly they can transform your financial trajectory. Many people who implement these principles see their net worth growth accelerate within months, not years. Once the initial systems are in place, the habits become second nature, creating a positive financial momentum that compounds over time. Remember, implementing the millionaire next door strategy isn't about deprivation. It's about making intentional choices that align with your true priorities. By creating automated systems, conducting regular spending audits, building a supportive community, and focusing on what truly matters to you, the millennial millionaire can build significant wealth regardless of economic headwinds. Aligning spending with priorities takes on a whole new meaning when your starting point includes record student debt and housing costs that outpace wages. Yet against these financial headwinds, a new breed of millennial millionaires is emerging, who aren't just matching their parents' wealth-building success. They're surpassing it using digital tools and lifestyle strategies that didn't exist a generation ago. The financial landscape for millennials is undeniably challenging. They're spending 31% more on housing than previous generations did at the same age, after adjusting for inflation. Student debt has reached unprecedented levels, with average balances for young borrowers about 13% higher than what earlier generations faced at comparable ages. Credit dependency has become the norm, with approximately 1 in 7 millennials maxing out their credit cards. But here's where things get interesting. Despite these obstacles, millennials are saving almost double what the average American saves. In 2024, the average millennial tucked away $12,004.87 compared to the overall American average of $7,460.94. And they're not just saving more, they're doing it with confidence. According to an Empower survey, 63% of millennials express optimism about achieving their financial goals. So what's their secret? How are they building wealth in an economy that seems stacked against them? The answer lies in their ability to leverage modern tools and rethink traditional wealth-building approaches. Take Casey, for example. A 34-year-old software developer who's amassed a net worth of $1.2 million, despite starting her career with $65,000 in student debt. While her parents focused on climbing the corporate ladder in a single location, Casey has embraced geographic arbitrage, a strategy many millennials are using to dramatically reduce living costs while maintaining their income. I realized I was paying $2,800 a month for my one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, but my company was fine with remote work, Casey explains. So I moved to Tucson, cut my housing costs by 70%, and invested the difference. My quality of life actually improved while my savings rate quadrupled. Geographic arbitrage, moving to lower-cost areas while maintaining higher market salaries, has become a wealth-building superpower for millennials that previous generations simply didn't have access to. The rise of remote work, accelerated by the pandemic, has opened doors to this strategy for millions of young professionals. But millennials aren't just relocating, they're completely reimagining consumption. The sharing economy has created opportunities to monetize assets and reduce expenses in ways that weren't possible for their parents. Take Marcus, a 29-year-old who's on track to reach millionaire status by 35, despite earning a modest teacher's salary. I rent out my spare bedroom on Airbnb when I travel, which covers my mortgage those months. I use car-sharing services instead of owning a vehicle, saving about $6,000 annually. And I've turned my photography hobby into a side hustle using platforms that connect me directly to clients, Marcus shares. My parents think I'm being cheap, but I'm just being strategic with resources. This strategic approach extends to how millennials leverage technology for financial planning. Unlike previous generations who relied on financial advisors charging substantial fees, millennials are using apps and online platforms to manage their investments, track spending, and automate saving. These digital tools provide sophisticated financial management capabilities that were once available only to the wealthy. Jordan, a 32-year-old nurse, credits these tools with helping her build a $400,000 investment portfolio despite starting with $43,000 in student debt. I have apps that automatically round up my purchases and invest the difference, others that analyze my spending patterns and suggest cuts, and platforms that let me invest in fractional shares of companies I believe in. My parents never had these tools. They had to rely on expensive brokers or do everything manually. What's particularly fascinating is how millennials are redefining what success looks like. While previous generations often measured achievement through material acquisitions, bigger houses, luxury cars, designer wardrobes, millennials are prioritizing experiences and flexibility over possessions. This shift aligns perfectly with research showing that experiences contribute more to long-term happiness than material goods. This values realignment creates a natural advantage for wealth building. By placing less emphasis on status symbols and more on experiences and flexibility, millennials are inadvertently adopting the spending patterns of millionaires we discussed earlier, focusing on what truly creates value rather than what creates the appearance of wealth. Take Emma and Tyler, a millennial couple who together earn about $120,000 annually, but have already accumulated over $600,000 in net worth by age 35. We live in a modest townhouse instead of stretching for the biggest mortgage we could qualify for. We drive reliable used cars, but we've traveled to 24 countries together, have fulfilling careers with flexible hours, and never stress about money, Emma explains. Our parents think we're missing out because we haven't upgraded our lifestyle as our income has grown. But we're actually living exactly the life we want, just without the financial stress they dealt with. This mindset shift is creating a generation that's surprisingly well-positioned for long-term wealth building. According to the Schwab 2022 Retirement Reimagined study, millennials are more likely to prioritize flexibility in their financial planning, often emphasizing lifestyle choices over traditional stable wealth-building methods. This might sound counterintuitive, but it actually creates resilience in an economy where traditional career paths and retirement models are increasingly unreliable. The financial adaptability of millennials is proving to be their greatest asset. Rather than following their parents' playbook, which often involved working for a single employer for decades, buying the largest house they could afford, and saving primarily through employer pension plans, millennials are creating diversified income streams, maintaining mobility, and building wealth through multiple channels. This approach is particularly valuable in today's volatile economy. By avoiding golden handcuffs like oversized mortgages and car payments, millennials maintain the flexibility to pivot when economic conditions change. By building skills that can generate income across multiple platforms, they're less vulnerable to single-employer layoffs. And by embracing technology, they can optimize their financial lives with precision that previous generations couldn't imagine. Perhaps most importantly, millennials are challenging the very definition of wealth itself. For many, true wealth isn't measured by account balances or possessions, but by the freedom to design a life aligned with their values. This perspective shift is perhaps the most valuable wealth-building tool of all. The economic challenges facing millennials haven't disappeared. Housing remains prohibitively expensive in many markets. Student debt continues to delay wealth building for millions. But these obstacles have forced creativity and innovation that's actually accelerating wealth creation for those willing to approach money differently. The most successful millennial wealth builders aren't following conventional wisdom. They're writing new rules for financial success that leverage the unique advantages of their generation. They're combining the time-tested principles of spending less than you earn and investing consistently with modern tools, flexible work arrangements, and a values-based approach to consumption. The result? A quiet revolution in wealth building that's creating millionaires who look nothing like previous generations of wealthy Americans. They may drive used cars and live in modest homes, but they're building investment portfolios, skills, and lifestyles that are creating sustainable prosperity in challenging economic times. As we wrap up, remember that true wealth isn't measured by designer labels or luxury cars. It's about creating freedom and security that spans generations. What I find fascinating is how financial literacy becomes a family legacy. When parents teach money management, their children are significantly more likely to develop those same healthy habits, creating a powerful cycle of wealth building. I'm particularly encouraged by what we're seeing with millennials today. Despite facing unique challenges, they're saving nearly $12,000 annually on average, almost double what typical Americans save. This shift represents a profound change in spending priorities. The path to generational wealth isn't complicated. It starts with a simple formula. Focus less on increasing your income and more on widening the gap between what you earn and what you spend. This isn't about depriving yourself. It's about making intentional choices that align with your deepest values and teaching those principles